Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for Truth show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. It's a pleasure to be back with you again tonight. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and we're going to be dealing in the space where you actually are availed of what's going on internationally, meeting those leaders that are changing our world for the better. Before we get going with tonight's presentation, many have been asking, how do I avail myself of these episodes? It's very simple. You click on YouTube, go to A Time for Truth show, click on that, hit the subscribe button. We'll be very happy to have you as one of our viewers, one of our members. There's no fee. You'll be availed of all of the 6 years of episodes on so many varied topics. And tonight, we have one of those topics, really that's so appropriate and really crucial to what's going on in today's world. Because, you know, we've been losing our humanity. We've gained technologically, actually almost at a frightening rate, a little bit overwhelming, because many people see what's been happening and we need to catch up. So tonight, we have a speaker who's coming to us from Florida, who's done tremendous amount in his life, in very many varied fields that we're going to be covering. So engineer, if you could, let's put up his pictures on the screen, and we're going to introduce Darren Tessitore from Boston, Massachusetts. There you see him, the CEO of Thrive Management. He's really a dynamic individual, speaker, trainer, and quite intelligent and dynamic entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience dealing all over the country, internationally, with speaking, with training in corporations and large organizations, in communities, in city governments. And really, what I love about him is he's known for his down-to-earth style, his humor, his ability to really be creative and meaningful when he's doing what he's doing. He engages audiences from the moment he steps out with his smile and steps on that stage. He's spoken to so many people across the United States of America that it would take the whole show just to go over all the locations that he's been at. And he's personally trained more than 20,000 business leaders, equipping them with practical tools and focusing their mindset so they continue with what they need to do long after his events disappear in time. He is the owner and the CEO of Thrive Management, a technology consulting firm, and he's the co-creator of Thrive Reviews, a reputation management company. He's a passionate man, passionate about leadership, about people, and really about building successful enterprises. He's especially driven to help individuals and organizations reach higher levels of performance and impact. And beyond business, Mr. Tessitore's mission is deeply personal. And he will tell you a little bit more about that tonight and what he experienced with some drug ravages that he experienced at a young age, losing some close friends and really impacting him on what his path was going to be for the rest of his life. He's an advocate and an ambassador and a leader of the Foundation for a Drug-Free World, founder of the Drug Educators Alliance, and helped educate tens of thousands of educators, law enforcement professionals, all across the U.S. and Canada. I could go on and on and on, but we wouldn't have time then to have him on our show. So we'll have to cut off his accolades and his accomplishments and just give you this important one, that this past year he was awarded in England with an International Freedom Medal for his magnitudinous work on drug education and prevention and helping to safeguard so many families across the globe. And engineer, if you will, let's bring him up live and bid a warm welcome to Darren Tessitore, the CEO of Thrive Management and Drug Educators Alliance. Welcome, Darren.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm sorry I had to cut off your bio, but the show would have ended before I even got a chance to speak to you. So let's, I want to really get to it because I know you have so much to offer, and it's from the heart, and I think it's so important in today's world. You lost your close friends at a very early age, and I wanted to ask you, how did those experiences influence you in what your decisions were personally and professionally?
That's a really interesting question. So before the age of 15, I had 7 friends die from drugs and alcohol. And it was interesting because it wasn't the death that you typically see today from drugs and alcohol with the overdoses of fentanyl and things like that. It was more smoking weed and drinking and getting in car accidents and motorcycle accidents, things along that line. So it didn't come as drastic as it would today for some of the kids that are running into that. But one thing that it did do was it really got me, especially at that time, thinking that this was it. I was going to die. I was heading down that path. My best friend had died. I had lost many other friends, and I really just didn't think that I was going to survive. And then I had an epiphany at one point. I was around 16 years old and realized, I don't have to have this happen to me. I can actually do something about this and make it so that I live. And luckily, I pulled out of it. I moved up to the mountains of New Hampshire, started skiing, and just kind of disconnected from that whole life, got my head on straight, and then, got things together and started moving in the right direction. And then years later, I was married and had kids, and my kids started to get to the age where I was when I started seeing drugs. And I realized I have to make sure that they don't go down that path. It's obviously my responsibility as a parent to make sure that they're not going to be getting drunk and high and falling in that trap that I did, especially then years later when drugs are so much easier to get and they're just kind of everywhere, right?
Exactly.
So that's when I luckily found the Foundation for a Drug-Free World, started learning about its materials, started teaching my kids about its materials, and quickly realized there really isn't anything truly being done to properly educate the youth of this planet on the dangers of drugs. There's a lot of things trying to be done, and I commend all those that are working on this, but there wasn't really any effective solution that was being implemented in schools. I noticed a lot of the schools starting to head in this direction of trying to get the kids to pass standardized testing so they can keep their grant funds coming in. So they started pulling back on all the basic things that we learned in school when we were kids, like home economics, shop, woodwork, drug education. These things started getting pulled out of the schools. And that's when I realized, well, if I don't make sure that these kids are doing something about it, who's going to? And started volunteering with the Foundation for a Drug-Free World. And then,
Well,
of course,
you know what? congratulations to you, and I want to commend you because, you know, many times in life, people go through things. You weren't unique in that. I mean, what you went through was horrific. But what's unique about you is you actually did something. You know, so many times people just go on their lives and they don't really handle or do anything to repair what they see it happen to them personally, what's happening to other people in the future. And I want to really hand it to you that you did that. I wanted to ask you, like,
Thank you.
Because you're welcome. You absolutely welcome, and that's who you are. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, is that, you know, because you also went on and you have these other businesses. And I wanted to ask you, how do you implement what happened then in your business enterprises? You know, your consulting, your marketing, your speaking. So how did you incorporate that? And what is your mindset when you're dealing now on the business side of it?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is that there's always a solution to every problem. Anything you're running into can be handled. So if I go into a client and I see something that's not right or something that needs to be fixed, I know that there is a solution and there's a way of fixing it. And I may not know that solution, but I know that I can figure out what that solution is or find somebody that knows that solution, right? And that's kind of been my driving force all these years, is that, hey, look, this may seem impossible, like we'll never solve this problem. But then you do. And then you come up with an actual way of handling it. Like with Thrive Reviews, for example, I knew that there were a lot of these local businesses that were spending a ton of money on advertising, a ton of money on marketing, and they weren't really getting the return on investment that they needed. They weren't getting the local traffic to find them. So when someone searched for dentist near me or chiropractor near me or urgent care near me, they weren't coming up. But someone was, and how do we get it so that they are? Because I don't know, I had a strong passion for helping the smaller companies that weren't getting found. The guys that should be found, that have a great service or product, but just aren't. So that's when Thrive Review was born. And we figured that out. We figured out, how do we get it so that that local company can pop up where they need to be when someone's looking for them. And it's been changing, obviously, over the years. You know, you had first just Google or Yahoo, and then Google Business Profile came along, and now you have AI and Gemini and ChatGPT and all these other things that a lot of these smaller businesses have no idea what they are, or they may be dabbling in it and trying to learn it, but just not using it in a way that can help them. So that's really what Thrive Reviews is all about. It's about helping those local businesses grow, helping them find the local traffic when people are looking for them. So, yeah, I guess that kind of was a long way of answering your question.
No, it makes total sense to me. And, kudos for helping the individual, because, you know, after COVID, it just seemed like they were, devastated, decimated. Right. The individual hardware store, the supermarkets, even the small supermarkets. It just seemed like everything became mail order. And I mean, it's great. They were delivered to your house, but there's all these people and all these occupations and jobs. I mean, those people have families, they have bills, they have futures to have. And it seemed like they just decimated. So actually, what you're providing is so fantastic, because if you really look at it, how does any large enterprise start? It starts out with the individual. And if we lose all individuals, I'm curious what's going to happen in the future with imagination, ingenuity, inventions or whatever, because if everything is corporate, you take away that individual. So I give you a lot of credit for doing that. I was going to ask you, because you worked with so many business leaders on what they were going through, like you said, their problems, their conflicts, the barriers they had maybe with their employees and whatever. And, how has that, for you, Darren Tessitore, how do you feel it's impacted you in your personal life or with your family or even just locally?
That's a great question. It's when you start looking at people as real people that have real lives and real problems, and you can help solve those problems, and because you care. And I think the more that you start really caring about people and your environment and what's going on around you, the bigger you become as a person, mentally and spiritually and family wise, and you name it. You just start growing because you care and you're doing something about it, right? So that's really what I've noticed over the years, is how the more I'm helping people, the more fulfilling it is to me. And it's not about the money. Yeah, obviously we have to live, we have to support our families. But when you have the higher purpose of doing it to make the world better and help other people in their lives, you don't really have to worry about the money. You make the money. The money will come, right? So that's kind of been my motto in life. Just help as much as I can. And so many times over the years, I've just helped people for the sake of helping them. I was at a conference one time for Drug Educators Alliance, my nonprofit, and I ran across this small business that this guy was brand new and he's trying to get started. And he had no idea what he was doing technologically. He had no idea how to get himself found on Google or on Google Maps or with AI, nothing. And he's just pounding it and pounding it and pounding. I'm like, man, look at this kid's passion. He really wants to do this and he really wants to make a difference with his services. But I know he's not going to really make it unless I give him some real tools. So I literally just sat down with him and sorted it out for him in a couple hours, put him in some right software, helped him get the technology rolling. And I'm like, I don't care if I make any money off this kid. And now I just got a text from him today. He's like, Darren, this has changed my life. My business is booming. I'm hiring more staff. So that alone just makes it all worth it, right? And I'm not saying go out there and give away all your services for free, but if you have the viewpoint of helping and being willing to help, it just makes things a lot better and easier all around for everybody. It's kind of all about like, how do we make this world better? There's so much divide and conflict right now. And there really doesn't have to be. If we all just have a little compassion and caring about our neighbors and friends and people we work with, life will be a lot easier and better for all of us, right? And it's interesting. A really good friend of mine pointed out to me the other day, he's like, there's a difference between being kind, right, and really actually caring. Like, I can meet you for lunch and you can have a piece of food on your lip and I'm kind and I'm not going to say anything because I'm being kind. But if I really cared about you, I would be like, hey, Ben, you got a little something on your lip here. You may want to get that off, right? And you would be like, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Now, had you left that meeting and got to the car or to your next meeting and saw this food on your lip, you'd be like, Darren, what the heck? Why didn't you tell me, right?
Exactly.
So it's the little things like that where we actually just start caring about everyone around us and how they're doing and how the world's doing and how we can make it a little bit better, one person at a time, which is really what drove me into the passion of starting my nonprofit, because I wanted to really do something on a broad scale about drug education. I wanted to reach every kid. And obviously we haven't done it yet, but we're in the process and we're rolling really fast right now. So it's that same viewpoint of who can I help, how much can I help, and how fast can I help? And you'll see, you'll just start doing better in all areas of your life.
It makes a lot of sense. A lot of times people are searching, and I know some people have problems with like headaches or backaches, or they can't get to sleep. They've got insomnia, and they tried all kinds of things, and unfortunately, some of them turn to some kind of medication. They don't know what to do. They lose hope with themselves. So what you're saying to me, is tremendous solution, because, it's interesting. I don't know if you knew this, but let's mention it for the viewers. The Surgeon General of the United States of America came out with an article that he published. This was Vivek Murthy. This was a few years ago, 2023. And he did a scientific study because he was going around the country like you were talking about. And he found that people were actually lonely, depressed, and they weren't doing well. And then he looked into it. He found out it wasn't just emotionally, which would make sense. You didn't need a study to know that. But it was also physically. So what was happening as he studied this, the scientific reports and studies were showing that because of what you mentioned and the lack of that caring, that lack of that social interaction, these people are actually getting, and they are getting physically sick, which I, as a surgeon, have always felt in my own office. I've always tried to have a certain rapport with people and felt that they healed better. So I totally agree with you. I think that our country and really the whole world needs to appreciate a little bit more, how much each one of us does for each other, and I can see that that's what you incorporate. What I was going to ask you, because you mentioned you went into the Foundation for a Drug-Free World, and I'm curious, back then, I know you were looking, but what was it that you saw that resonated with you? What made this program different for you than these other ones that you probably looked at?
It's a great question too. One of the biggest things was it wasn't just a say no to drugs campaign. It wasn't a, hey, don't do drugs, say no to drugs. That's not going to work, especially in today's days. I mean, we're talking 2006, right? So kids are starting to get phones. People are starting to get phones. The internet's becoming more real. People can search for things much easier. And what happened is I was looking for something that was going to educate the kids on what drugs really were and how drugs really worked. And that's what the Drug-Free World does. It literally teaches you what are the drugs, what do they do, how do they work, and how do they affect you. And then it has real people telling you their stories about what those drugs do to them or had done to them. So it makes it just very real to a kid or a young adult to understand, okay, what is heroin? What is marijuana really? What is ecstasy? What's cocaine? What is fentanyl? What do these things really do? Not what does someone who's high telling me how fun it is, or someone who's drunk telling me how fun it is, or someone who has the interest in getting me to take that drug, right? If I'm trying to sell you the drug, of course I'm not going to tell you it's going to kill you and you could possibly die, right? I want you to take the drug, right? So the whole goal there that I really liked was the fact that it's very real, very to the point, and very simple to understand. And it just made you aware of what the drugs do. And I have 3 girls, 20, 26, 27. None of them have ever done drugs at all. Not even a thought of them ever doing drugs. And it's not because their dad's doing this. It's because they genuinely do not want to. They have no desire to do drugs. So I think, right, and I've seen that time and time again, more kids that I've shown the program or more adults or teachers that I've trained the program and how to use the program, the more I've seen them go, Darren, the kids are getting it. They don't want to do drugs, right? I mean, one of the big industries that I went into was driver education, because driver education requires drugs and alcohol. And since I've been doing this, we've seen a decrease in drugged driving deaths has gone down by 52% amongst teenagers.
Wow.
Right? Nationwide. Whether it's just me that's causing that, obviously there's more factors in play. But the bottom line is we're educating the teachers and the teachers are educating the kids. So the kids are getting reached. Yeah, we have a lot more work to do, but still we know that it's working. So we're pushing on this thing that works. One of the things I found in running businesses for many, many years is that if you find something that works, you don't change it, right? So I know this is working and I'm not going to change it. I'm going to keep pushing and making sure we can reach as many kids and as many teachers as possible, right? Which is, what my nonprofit's whole goal is. My whole goal of the nonprofit is to make sure that every kid in this country gets properly educated on the dangers of drugs. And we now are building teams of teachers that are going into schools and they're talking to kids. We have a first-time drug offender program right now, where if you get arrested for drugs, you can go take our online program. It's about a 5-hour course that literally walks you through what drugs are and how they work and how they affect you. And it has a lot of the Drug-Free World materials in there, super relevant, and gets these kids to decide, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. We also have a corporate drug education training program that we just launched, where we're going into corporations and we're teaching their staff really what drugs are, so they understand what the drugs are, and then they know how to talk to their kids and friends and families about drugs, which isn't happening for these adults. No one's been focusing on, what does a parent do when their kids are doing drugs? Or what does the parent do so that they can avoid their kids from doing drugs? Or if they have a friend that has a kid that's 10 or 12 or 13 years old that may get into drugs, how do they actually make sure that that person doesn't do that? So we're embracing the teachers, we're embracing the parents, and we're reaching the kids. We also are a lot.
You
Go
know,
ahead, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. You know what? I think it's important because I think the point that you're bringing out is important to emphasize is that it's not just one person's problem. It's not just some teenager's problem or some older drug addict down the street who's homeless. You make a good point. It's a society. And, you know, I like that, what you're doing, because, you know, if we look at it as a society, then we're going to really look at it the correct viewpoint, the correct magnitude. And like you said at the beginning, I like that when you mentioned what you said about your friend at the table. Exactly. To look at that person on the street and say, hey, to what you're doing, you're kind of saying, hey, do you know that drug that you're taking? Did you see what it's doing? And, you know, because you're so right. A lot of times people don't realize we're getting near the end of the show, and like everything that's great, the time always flies. So I wanted to ask you, when you look towards the future, what change do you most hope to see? And when they think of Darren Tessitore, and they look in the Wikipedia and history books years from now, what would you like that change to be that you created?
Kids not dying needlessly from drugs.
Beautiful. And, you know, that kind of it's hard to get more than that, but I wanted to ask you another question now. We have about a minute left. What final message do you want to give those viewers watching this event, this video, this segment, on where we should head as a country in 2026?
That's a good question. I think one thing I would say is compassion and caring about your fellow man. And remember, everyone has a viewpoint, and a viewpoint meaning a point in which they are seeing something from. So they have this idea or concept of what they think is right. And even though you may think it's not right, in their mind, they think it's right. So instead of just fighting and yelling at each other about how wrong we all are, we need to actually be compassionate and caring about each other and communicate and understand their viewpoint, right? And get them to understand your viewpoint without screaming and yelling at them or trying to make them wrong. The more we start living like that, the happier we're all going to be. Because we all know someone that has an opposing viewpoint, and we probably want to just scream in their face and tell them that they're stupid for thinking this. But that's not what's going to make this world any better. That's exactly what those that are trying to cause you to fight want you to do. The people that want you to fight, to keep you distracted from whatever they're doing, or keep the world upset, are going to try to get you to fight. And there are a small percentage of population on this planet that do want you to keep fighting. And just realize that that may not be coming from a place of the heart. It's probably coming from some weird viewpoint or whatever. But the basic communication here is, if you're compassionate and care about your fellow man, we can all do something about making this world better.
Beautiful. Well, you know what? I don't really think this show is ending. You can feel there's a good vibe. And I actually think that it's beginning. And I'm glad that we had you on the show because, you know, appropriately enough, it's called the Time for Truth Show. And Mr. Tessitore, what you do is bring a lot of truth to humanity, to what we should be doing. And it's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben. It's been a pleasure being here.
Absolutely. And if people want to contact you, what's the best email for them to get you at?
I would go to info@drugeducators.org.
Very good. Give it to me again.
info@drugeducators.org.
Well, I'm going to go check that out myself. Thank you for being on the show. For all you watching, Mr. Tessitore is a great example. Let's do that. We make so many New Year's resolutions. Let's make one for 2026. Let's be humane. Let's be compassionate. Let's be caring. And let's appreciate what wonders we really have in this world of ours and how much better we're going to make it in this year. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you, and we'll see you on the next episode of A Time for Truth Show. Happy 2026.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got. But the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet